Thank you for tuning in to Spiritual Debriefing, a podcast about Christian men living a Christian life in a very unchristian world, with your hosts Daniel Meadows, Derek Fisher, Randy Bryson, Jed Harris, and Ray Taggart. Tonight's special guest is Mike Taylor.
Welcome to Spiritual Debriefing. I am Daniel Meadows. Glad to be with you. What's up, Randy?
What's up? I'm Randy.
Nice to have you back, Randy.
Hey, I am
I'm
back.
so glad you're back.
I am glad. Yeah.
I'm Jed.
Hey, Jed.
And I'm Mike.
Mike is back.
Mike.
Mike's in the house.
And I'm Derek.
Hey, Derek.
Hey, Ray.
And, of course, I'm over here with all the knobs and buttons, pretending like I know what I'm doing. So let's get this going. Oh, and before we go, I forgot last time, please like, subscribe, share the podcast, leave us a comment. That actually works really, really well if you could do that, if you like what you're hearing. If you don't like what you're hearing, tell us what you don't like. We like all feedback. So share this around, get more people listening, and hopefully we can help some people out. All right. Now we can get to it.
There we go, Daniel.
Let's do it. So we started talking about raising kids a little bit last week, kind of kicked that off, or 2 weeks ago, whatever, our last podcast.
Yeah.
And so we're going to kind of continue that. We brought Mike back with us to help answer some questions.
Some wisdom.
We got some
That's what we need.
wisdom.
I wanna be
Yes,
like Mike.
wisdom from Mike. And
The old
so-
guy, yeah. Yeah.
Mike, how many kids did you raise?
Total 10.
10.
Had 8 children from my first marriage, and then 2 after the divorce of 26 years. And so we had to deal with split families. We had my biological children and 2 stepchildren, which makes it a unique situation in and of itself.
Yeah. I know I have a few questions for you, but I mean, if anyone else has any questions, I mean, I know some of the split family thing is some questions as well, but you know, here's the one that I'm dealing with right now, and let's see if you can help me with that, Mike. And this is the one because I have a teenage daughter. She's a senior this year. So, yeah, I need a lot of patience. But here's the one that was recently. You know, they get so mad and they just say, they react and say, I hate you. When I grow up and when I get out of the house, I'm not talking to you no more. I hate you. Sometimes that hurts. And I know recently that hurt my wife pretty good, And Mike, I guess my question to you is, I know you probably heard that before.
Absolutely.
And what do you think some of the better reactions to that is?
As I was looking at these questions that you gave me and kind of getting an overview of what was taking place, I got thinking about when my children said that to me. Mm-hmm. And I can say from past experience, I didn't handle it as well as I should have. As I matured in my Christian walk, I realized that it's what they're saying out of their mouth isn't really coming from their heart. And so you had to kind of put that in perspective to realize that they're saying something from an emotion more so than from a truth. Mm-hmm. And so to be able to kind of process that and think that through and say, I know you love me. I know you don't like the decisions I've made. I know you don't appreciate the things that I'm trying to do for you. But you're also, as a Christian parent, you have the responsibility to train your children the way they're supposed to be through the admonition of the Lord. And so I read a quote from Irma Bombeck, who had a daughter that told her the same thing. Mm-hmm. And the quote went, it says, I hurt when you say that, but love you enough to let you say it to me.
That's good.
And I just thought that was because as I was preparing or kind of thinking through this and reached out to my own children to kind of get feedback of what I was a parent, how I was a parent when they were younger, and they provided me some really good, insightful things. One of the things that they all said was that I demonstrated love for them even though the things I did, they didn't always appreciate.
And it's almost like what Jesus does, I think. Because he always shows us his love all the time. He shows us the forgiveness. And, and I think sometimes we get in battles with God too, like, we do with our kids like that. I hate you, God. Why am I going through this right now? Why is this so difficult? And I think sometimes we say those things and don't really mean it either when we're talking to God. And, when I had a little time to reflect on that question, after I gave it to you and to really process, what my daughter said. And that's what really got to me was, sometimes we have that relationship with Jesus and, he still loves us and we have to do that to our kids. And, I know we always heard, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt. Well, that's not true. That's not true at all.
That's the biggest lie we could ever tell.
It is. And, even with my wife being set back on that, like, man, that hurt. Like, she was almost in tears, and just like, it hurt her pretty deep. I mean, because you're right, Mike. I mean, all the things that we do as parents, we provide, we work, we try to give them the best life that we can, and we try to give them things that we didn't have as kids. And, and sometimes that's a big mistake. And, we'll touch on that later because that's where it really is my pet peeve right now on parenting. And I've learned it through my past too, as well as that, but we'll touch on that a little later. But I like that quote, Mike. I mean, it really does is when they say that, we got to show them that love. I love you enough that you can say that to me. You can express your feelings, but I know because I love you so much that I know that's not coming from your heart.
And I think the trick is then making sure that you don't change, get angry and overreact when they hurt your feelings like that, because that's I think the fine line to balance that many people have an issue with is you punishing and correcting, but not going so far where, because if they can see that you're angry and you're showing your anger when you're doing it, they're going to pin it on the anger and not even look at what did I do? What are the consequences? What are you actually saying?
Right.
So keeping your own level head is not an easy task.
And that will be the thing they remember. That's one of the things that my oldest son, when he sent me some reactions to some questions I asked him, said the same thing, that Dad, you sometimes reacted with anger. I know that you loved me, but all I remembered is your actions, the things that you did. Those are the things that stuck in my head longer than the times that we tried to work through things. So you really do have to keep a calm demeanor about it. And as I told your wife, one of the things that we have to make sure that we use proper vocabulary sometimes when we say, instead of you hurt me, you personalize it. I got hurt by what you said. Now, so you're not longer pointing fingers. You're not putting your children on the defensive. You're just simply communicating your feelings. They don't have to like what you say, but they can't deny how you feel. But if you attack them, they have justification to attack back.
Yeah.
Now,
And they do.
sometimes you got to walk away though to calm your mind down, right, before you come back to address that. Especially after something like that, I would think that you got to go spend some time and pray first off for some wisdom to speak back to your kids. But essentially, I mean, just like an argument with anybody, you've got to step away for a moment.
I think you also get kind of really caught off guard when you have a child that generally well behaved, does what they're supposed to do for the most part, and then just out of the blue that happens. You're right, Daniel. The very first thing you need to do is just kind of back away from it, because if you react to it, you're probably going to react wrong.
And that's what I'm working on right now is that reaction, because my reaction is just, that fast, and it's going 0 to 60.
That's that background though that you came from. As a cop, you reacted quick like that.
But you need to step away. But you better get back to it pretty quick.
Yeah.
You don't step away and let it sit for a day. You got to get back to them.
Because they're like, what did I say to you? I don't remember.
Yeah.
What's on TikTok?
Yeah.
Yeah,
too fast.
Right.
Let me slide this in here. It says our children can be our greatest teacher if we're humbled enough to receive their lessons.
Oh, you're absolutely right on that, because I think about that all the time, and I tell Autumn that as well. I learn a lot from both of them, Autumn and Wyatt. I mean, I learn a lot, and it teaches me, right from the get-go, it teaches me patience. I mean, really, that's my biggest thing, is that these kids have taught me is patience. And and another thing that it really teaches me is forgiveness. And because, I love them so much that it's easy for me to forgive them. And I sometimes go back to and I remind my wife this all the time. I says, we were the same age. You remember when we did this? You remember when we did that? We were the same. We did the same things. And that's why it kind of gives us that little moment to go, okay, I understand. I forgive you. Those are the two important things that has taught me having kids, is that patience and forgiveness. And
We got to remember that we were forgiven first.
oh yeah,
We were stubborn enough to do that to our parents, and then here it is on us now. So
oh yeah, that's what my parents always said too. Yeah, the way you're acting, you're gonna have twice as worse. Whatever. But yeah,
But I'd rather have a kid that come up and tell me what your daughter said than the one that thinks it and will not talk to you.
yeah,
right.
that's how.
Because there's no recovery from that.
Yeah.
I 12 years without my oldest daughter.
Right. Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. I don't know if you wanted to bring that up or not.
I'll bring it up. Was going out to eat one day. We was all out, been doing something, and went through Chick-fil-A because she wanted to eat Chick-fil-A, and we had 6. So we pulled in, and of course they was busy, and I said, I'm not dealing with this. We've got to go on. We got to get somewhere. And it led from a fight over not getting to eat where she was to when I dropped her off with her mother. She has not darkened my door in 12 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you're right. Maybe been better if you just said it to me.
And I'm sure I didn't respond correctly in any of the situations. I'm going to tell you, I did not. But I didn't have no way to go back and regroup. I didn't know exactly what she had on her mind or anything. So
Now, I know you told me recently too. You got to talk to her a little bit here and there.
we're speaking.
Yeah.
I mean, it's nothing big. I was in the driveway one day talking to Haley, and she pulled in, and of course she referred to me as Haley, tell your dad. And then she called me Jed and this and that, and I'm not dad. So, but at least we're speaking.
Right.
There is a cordialness to it now. So,
Yeah, and I'm not saying you haven't done this, but those are those situations where hopefully you've extended the olive branch. You've said, I'm sorry for whatever I've done, and I'm ready to talk to you. I don't have a daughter that old yet, although I think I said it last time, but my daughter, when she was 3, told me I ruined her whole life. So that happened right on, nice and early. Don't remember what I told her she couldn't do, but there was something that was, Dad, you ruined my whole life. I just stomped off. But of course, being the smart aleck I am, I came back with, well, that's because your life is so short.
but there's lots of times that, I just didn't have that opportunity to even offer that olive branch because there was no communication or sight or sound.
Yeah, and then I think that brings up that forgiveness as well.
It does.
I mean, I know you probably have already forgive her for whatever,
Oh yeah,
and you're just, here I am. I'm here waiting for you.
that's it.
And I think, and when we reflect back to this all the time and how Jesus was, how Jesus is, we run from him, and then he's always still there waiting for us. You know what I mean?
right.
And it just forgives us, and that I think he gives us the best example to be a father, and circumstances like that is, hey, I'm here.
We did have right before Christmas. I invited her over to my parents' house for our Christmas Eve, and she said I would probably come, but we're going out of town with her now fiance. So, and then,
It just takes some growth. Sometimes it takes for them to get away for a while and to be able to come back where they need to be. And, we, with our lack of patience, we want it to happen overnight. But just the conversation that you're having with her and just staying in touch with her, knowing that she's welcome to be part of the family. Her life is about to change. You just said she's got a fiance. A lot of times that changes the whole attitude of of where they're at and their thinking. And so he may see the need for reaching out to your family and helping to bring her back. And so it's just being patient, staying in contact with her. If you send cards or whatever to the other children, then just go ahead and continue to do the same thing with her, just to know that she's just as equal as all the rest of the children, and just don't forget her that way.
Yep.
Yeah.
We sent cards all them years, birthday flowers and all that, just like the rest of them, all the way through.
That's good.
I think this runs in the situation here that we've all been in. It says you spend years wishing your parents would get off your back to only realize they're the only ones that really had your back.
That's
Very true.
So, I mean, at the end of the day, we could sit here and say, we hate you, we want to go on, you know. But once they get that first taste of living, they're going to realize how much stability they had.
Right. Right. I got another question for you, Mike. This is another one that I'm dealing with, and if you all have anything that you're dealing with, I mean, speak right in. But this, I have, it's always coming back to the teenage daughter, but right now it's the teenage daughter and the mother, arguing all the time, right? They get into these little battles, and as the dad, you're like, okay, I'm gonna, I don't know, to be the referee on this little, episode. But sometimes I sit back and just let them battle it too. I don't know what the proper way is, Mike. I don't know if you probably dealt with that many times, but looking for a little wisdom there.
I've gotten in trouble over this same very issue many times, but to put it as bluntly as I could put it, I put both of them in timeout.
Yeah, yeah. Because we get in trouble for picking sides sometimes.
It's like you all just need to split. Kind of what Daniel said earlier. You can't deal with it. You're dealing with the emotions. You need to split. You go there, and when you're ready to come talk, we can come back together again. And I know it doesn't always work,
right?
But it does work sometimes. Your spouse will get mad at you. Your child will get mad at you. But it's the best thing because something's going to be said. If they're in the heat of the moment and they're barking at one another, something's going to be said that isn't meant. I hate you, whatever. Those kind of comments are going to come out. It's just going to infuriate whoever receives that insult or whatever. So really the best thing you can do as a husband is to say, you just need to split apart, almost to the point where you stand between them and say, I don't want to listen to it. Y'all go.
Right. Yeah, I've done that too. Yeah.
Your room.
Yeah. I don't know about you guys. Have you guys dealt with that?
I usually, when it gets to
Daniel's over there shaking his head no. I wonder, why not, Daniel?
usually I allow the two to speak their minds, but when it crosses a disrespectful line from a daughter to a mother,
Oh, yeah.
that's when I step in. Because the way it is around our house, right or wrong, I don't want any feelings left hanging in the balance. You say it to my face, we'll deal with it. Right or wrong, get it out, be done, move on with life. And so far, we've had a pretty decent relationship about that with the oldest, and Hannah. She's just mouthy all the way around. But
Where'd you get that from?
both of us.
Oh.
But at the end of the day, mine's about to be 16, so I mean, not too far behind yours. And I'm waiting for those days, coming, listening to you, thinking, "Oh, it's coming soon."
It's coming.
Yeah, but yeah, we have plenty of arguments. But as soon as you cross a disrespectful line, that's when Dad jumps in.
Yeah, I've done that too. Yeah.
Because at the point, those two need to just get it done. And if things need to be said, things need to be said. And I don't really want to take the authority away from my wife whenever it's their conversation. But then when it comes to a point where you're disrespecting and you're still a child, I'm going to treat you like one now,
Right.
type situation.
I say to my kids all the time too, I says, I don't talk to your mother that way.
Yeah.
and you don't need to talk to her that way either.
Exactly.
You know,
Same.
it's the same respect factor. What about you?
I haven't had much, but if it is, it's kind of like what Randy said. It's the disrespect factor. You just kind of sit back, and when something crosses the line, that's when I bail in. But and it don't get there very often. But I do see one thing. This might be dangerous for you, Derek. You and Autumn are a lot alike. So when you start,
I hear that a lot, and I don't agree to that.
you
Oh
are.
yeah, absolutely.
You know what? That's funny. You want to bring that up right now? Is that me and my dad? We're like each other too. But when we battled, you know, growing up, and now I have a great relationship with my dad.
Yep.
You know, talk to him all the time, go and visit. I mean, just a good relationship now. And I think a lot of that too was, you know, it was my fault. And I think, Mike, you're right, because when we grow up and we mature a little bit more and we realize that, you know, our parents did the best that they could do at the time of what they were doing. And we had a roof over our head, we had meals, we had this, you know, we were thankful for a lot of things that we take for granted. And I think that's what hit me too, was, you know, as being a cop, and you got to see some of the parents on how they treated their kids. You get to see the households that they were raised in. And that job really just humbled me. And go, man, I am thankful for everything that I do have. I am thankful for the parents that I've had. You know, and it's unfortunate, you know, my mom passed away when she was 42. You know, she got to see Autumn get born, and then, you know, that was it. But looking back now, you know, I had a great family. You know, and I think that sometimes too that I have to look at Autumn as well. When we battle, I'm like, man, this is like me and my dad, and it's because we're alike.
Yeah.
I mean, we're stubborn, we're hard-headed, and you know, no, I'm right, no, you're right. You know, I don't know, but
You're both right in your
we're
own
both,
ways.
yeah, we are, yeah,
Yeah.
But I think you hit the nail on the head right there too. Is we finally get to a point where we're maturing better, and they're getting to a point where they're just starting.
right,
So we don't see eye to eye anymore.
right.
It's one of those deals that, why is this so hard? Oh yeah, I'm 20 years older than you. I'm sorry, but you know, you need to have common sense.
But I'm going to share a comment from my oldest son, who will turn 44 in February, kind of dealing with the same issue. And this is what he wrote to me as I got a response. He says, "Always siding with mom as soon as you got home without, in my opinion, getting the whole side of the story was wrong. I understand the importance of a unified front, but sometimes you don't take the time to listen to me and you automatically take mom's side, and I'm always at fault." And he says, "And I blame you for that."
That's a tough one.
And I'm dealing with that right now too, because Autumn's the same way. She goes, "You don't listen to me. You don't hear my side of the story." And I do the same thing you're doing, that you did, Mike, is, you know, I have Crystal's back. You know, I'm like, you're 16. You don't know the world, right? But, you know, maybe we might have a repercussion on that.
You know, because he later says in his note, he said, "I'm not perfect." He said, "But some of the things that happened in the past, I've forgiven them all. I've set them all aside. But you always need to remember that I can forget those small things. But some of the issues that you took against me are long lasting." He said, "They're still there." He said, "I've forgiven you, but they don't go away." And so I know, you know, sometimes trying to get a teenager, regardless, girl or whatever,
Right.
to get into an honest conversation because they don't want to put their guard down because they're talking to an adult, they're talking to a parent, and they feel they're already on the defensive anyway. And most of the time, as dads especially, we oftentimes want to fix things. And so when they start to share what's really happening, we hear things we don't like to hear, and we want to react to those, and that's not what they want to hear. They just want you to have 2 ears and no mouth.
Right, right.
And their delivery system is not the way that we want to hear it.
Absolutely.
You're right. You're right.
They're on their defensive, and the way they want you to listen, and we're not ready for that.
Well,
Yep.
let me ask you this, Mike. If he says that in response, how would the story be different from your wife's compared to his? And how would that change the situation? And here, this is because usually if I come home and I get told that something happened, I usually ask them their side in front of their mom. And either she corrects the story or they tell me exactly what she said. So how's it different on your side here?
But your daughter's already on the defensive because she's going to present her case, and there's already a prosecuting attorney ready to overcome everything that's said. If you're going to have that conversation, you need to go have a conversation separate.
Yep.
Find out the story, find out the wife's story, because as you all know, you're policemen, eyewitnesses, see different things, hear different things, have different perspectives. And so to get your child's perspective, your wife's perspective, and yes, you have to support your wife, but sometimes, believe it or not, wives are just flat out wrong. Did I say that out loud?
Never.
Bum, bum, bum.
That was Mike.
Some of these guys' wives listen to the podcast.
And they
But
thought
no,
I
they
was
don't.
bringing wisdom.
But do you think if you did that and the stories were the same, would the punishment be any different?
I don't think you interrupt your wife. I mean, that you can't. That's what I was just going to say. Is if my daughter said that, I'd be like, all right, I'm going to listen to you, but I'll tell you right now, your mom laid down the punishment or told you what's happening. That's happening, regardless. 'Cause
Exactly.
That's what's happening.
Yeah, you got to keep that unified front. But you got-
Exactly. I'm just,
but you got to make sure that the discipline, and I really don't like the term punishment, but the discipline that you use has to be appropriate to the crime.
Exactly.
And the other thing that I read as I was preparing is the act, is it a poor choice or is it a deliberate act? And we sometimes think, well, you didn't get, well, we automatically accuse them of something they did deliberately when it could very well have been something that just happened, and we don't take it that way. So that's why I say you get the story from their perspective, and then you say, well, now I know you were told this was the direction. You had clear, you're old enough to understand. Now you can understand what the consequences are. But
Exactly.
There's a law for that. I don't remember whose law it is, but it's the, don't attribute to malice what is more often attributed to stupidity.
yes, good quote.
Well, let me ask you, Mike, though, like your son right now, now that he wrote that, does he have kids?
Yes, he's got two.
Now, does he listen to his kid's story now?
Well, the irony is he's dealing with the same kinds of things that he did with his younger brother, and his two children are dealing with the same thing. And as I watch them, I don't get to interact with them much because they're in Florida, but I get to watch his choices and some of the things that, honestly, some of the things that he claims that we did as parents to him as the oldest child, he sometimes is doing to his own. Now, he recognizes that, and he's trying to fix that, but it's just I guess it's genetic because he's doing the same kinds of things. And Ann and I kind of sit back and watch as he's raising children. We're kind of thinking, kind of assessing and saying, this looks familiar.
Right. It's effective. Is it working?
Do you sit back and go, don't do that?
It's kind of eerie to some extent to watch him watch his two children, raise his two children, living through the same things that he would oftentimes complain to us about that we were doing to him because he was the oldest. And so I think he's trying to learn from it, but I see a lot of I guess I trained him well to be a poor parent in some cases.
If it works, don't
I
if
was
it's
just-
not broken, don't fix it.
Just going to say, it must have worked in some way.
Right. And sometimes we can kind of reverse it as well. Is that some things that we were raised with, we want to change in the process of doing that. We can even talk about like punishment. Like I me growing up, I had the rod, man. The belt, the paddle, I mean, all of it. And we've kind of changed that a little bit in our family. We still give spankings. but never have brought out the belt, have never brought out the paddle, anything like that. That was something that I wanted to change that I got brought up in. Was it effective? I don't know. I mean, so far, they're decently well-behaved kids for the most part. But, we can bring up that just like that. You didn't hear my side of the story. Well, me growing up as a kid, now as being an adult and having children of my own, I wanted to change a little bit than what I got brought up in. I'd say there's no wrong or right way to parent, right, Mike?
No, there's no. I haven't found an instruction manual other than scripture.
I think there's 7,000 books on parenting, but they're all different.
I guarantee you, there's a wrong way, but
Right.
but
Well,
there's
I've seen
no
that.
right way.
I've seen that.
I'll
yeah.
go with that.
Yeah.
This quote here says everyone knows how to raise a child except for the person who has them.
Yes.
You know who'd probably agree with you on that? God.
Yeah.
Because he deals with all of us. I mean,
Right.
honestly, he's given us pretty darn clear instructions, and we don't seem to get that either. So,
And the other part of that says 90% of the parents is just thinking about when they can lie down again.
Right.
I actually read an article about my children used to refer to me as the iron hand. When I spanked them, they said I must have had an iron hand. But the article I read said that you should use something like a fly swatter or a spatula because it detaches you from the punishment. That they can connect in later years the instrument you're using versus you physically touching your child. I don't know how valid that is, but I thought that was kind of an interesting concept.
Yeah, because if you bring that up to like animal training, you're using different
Yeah.
things, a hot stick and the whips and everything else, and then when you have that in their hand, they're already tensed up and going, "Oh, I know it's coming."
You watch a dog that you've hit with your hat a few times. Anytime you adjust your hat, now they're like
Right.
cowarding down, and
Well, when that's out of your hand and you have that, you
Yeah.
lost that connection.
Yeah.
You're right. There's probably some truth
Some
in
truth
that.
in that,
Yeah,
for sure.
Absolutely. What about you, boys? You got any questions for?
Mike, I think the biggest question I have, because you have an adopted child, right?
Yes.
Yes. How is, because that's something me and my wife have looked into since we can't have our own, and so how is raising an adopted child different than raising your own?
Well, I have to clarify. My adopted child is a special needs child. He was a shaken baby and had severe brain damage as early as 5 weeks old, and so he's been cortically blind and fed through a stomach tube for years. But we also were foster parents, and we had a couple of foster children, which although they went back home, dealing with an adopted child is just. You just take ownership. They're your children. It's something that's so needed in our society today. There's such a demand for it, and to be able to take a child and just love on them and show them Christ's love. One of the questions that Derek talked about was, what do you do at the beginning of raising children? And so, when you if you were able to adopt or you choose to adopt, and you got a younger child. You have a great ability to establish the scriptural blueprints that they need. I just remember when our children were small, there used to be a cartoon series called Adventures of Odyssey. There's like 700 episodes, and we watched those all the time. And we had some scripture memorization stories called GT and the Halo Express. And there was like 12 scripture verses. And so being able to bring a child into your home obviously helps build that character for that child. But once they're yours, Daniel is ours. We don't refer to him as an adopted child. He's our kid.
Right.
Little Elizabeth, that was in our home for a while as a foster child, she was our kid. The kids didn't refer to him as an adopted child. I sometimes do now, just kind of because people say, well, how many kids you have? And I kind of go through the whole process. But a child's a child, and they just need parents.
So how do you, because most of them in the foster and adoption background area there, come from messed up homes. How do you break through that barrier?
Love. Love overcomes all. I'm convinced of that. That although they may have, if you're getting a 3 or 4 year old or whatever that's come from a bad environment and they may have been in a drug environment, over the course of time, your love and the way you care for them and the way you protect them and watch over them, you'll win them over. That's how God brought us, his love for us brought us to him. We didn't deserve the love, but he kept showing it to us anyway. And I'm just convinced as a parent, the best thing you can do, as sincerely as you can, is to show the kind of love. And that is for guys to let down our guards to be loving dads, not disciplined dads, not the, we homeschooled. And so I was always referred to as the principal. So I was the authoritarian a lot of times, and I didn't want to be that person. I wanted to be the loving dad, because a couple of my children, as they responded back to me, remember the time I spent with them at the ball field, on the soccer field, defending them at school for a teacher with giving them a hard time or whatever. And they saw that as loving them enough to care for them. And so I really believe that this, even though they're going to come with baggage, love's going to overcome all that.
It's that love and that relationship that you have, Yep. And even we can even bring it to stepchildren too as well, because when my mom and my dad got married, I was 3 years old.
Right.
So my dad brought me in as his own, and really, growing up, didn't really blink an eye and didn't say, "Hey, this is my stepson." He's always referred to, "Hey, this is my son." And it's funny because if you ever meet my dad, we look like each other, we act like each other, and we're not blood related. But I think Mike hits that on the head, is that love. And I think really most important too that I've looked back on raising kids is building that relationship with your child, going to go do those things, going to the ball field, being tired, taking them to practice. Just this Monday, just took Autumn up here to ride her horse. I didn't feel like doing it. I really didn't. It was cold, and I didn't want to do it. But it's those times that that they're going to remember, I think, as children, is when you're there and you're showing that love and you're building that relationship. Those are the memories that they're going to remember. Doing those things that you don't want to do, but they want to do it. We have to do it. I mean...
That's exactly what my son said here. And said, you didn't really seem to try to connect with us on the things that we are interested in. And for him, it was like reading Legos, video games. He said, as an adult, you're now trying to get back into that part of my world, but you didn't seem to take the time he said, I didn't think about it at the time, but I kind of do a reflection. You just didn't want to make that commitment to get involved with some of the things that I wasn't interested in.
Right.
I'm not a video game
Yeah, me
person.
neither. I play video games with Wyatt all the time. I don't like them.
Yeah. But that's what he said. He remembers that lack of connectedness.
Mm-hmm.
So doing the things with your kids, even when you don't want to.
And it's hard to split that time up as well. I mean, I know y'all have more kids, but just with the two, they're two separate people. And that, like, Wyatt's into the Legos, the video games, the tech world,
Nerf guns,
all that stuff. And then Autumn's in a whole different other world. And I have to learn that as a parent. That's what I'm really learning right now, is where do I split my time up in between, not just showing favoritism to one. And that's the same thing is, for example, me and Wyatt are building a goat cart. And the only time we have to work on it is late at night. And I don't want to go in the shop. I don't want to do this, but I know he wants to. He bought, some of the stuff he's using his money to buy parts. So it's like, okay, you've spent your money to do this. I'm going to show the time and the effort. Let's do this together. In the video games, I'm with you on that, Mike. I mean, some of those games are way too fast for me, and you play the Call of Duty, I'm like, I'm already dead.
Yeah.
Like I didn't even play,
I just respawned.
I just had this happen, but it's those things that I do.
clicking A.
I mean, even when we go to the church camps, even when we go do things with them, it's me being out there and involved and doing those things with them. And I really think that, that they're going to remember those moments.
You got to remember, I was brought up on Pong.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Atari?
That game might be Derek's speed, but
Right. You're right.
I'm gonna sneak this in before we change subjects here, but the gain is not having the children; it's the discovery of love and how to be loved.
Absolutely.
yep. And actually, I have a Bible verse that it's for the children to hear, but parents, I mean, maybe you can work this one into Bible study. But Proverbs 1:8-9 says, "Hear, my son, your father's instruction, and forsake not your mother's teaching, for they are a graceful garland for your head and pendants for your neck." Right. So again, that's something that if as a child, I wish I would have understood that verse, because it makes so much more sense now as an adult. And it's like, yeah, they're just we're trying to help. We're trying to say, we made these mistakes. I know what you're doing. I know where it's going to lead you. But no matter how many times we try to tell them, they don't listen.
Right.
And
That's right, huh?
That is right.
I try to tell that even at the age my daughter is. She's 8, and I try to tell her, I'm like, listen, I know exactly. I did it. I said it. I thought it. I was in the exact same place you were. Granted, different stuff. That's always twists to it, but I'm just trying to help. But also at the same time, part of me saying, it's like, well, I still did the mistakes, and I had to learn the hard way, and that's sometimes how you just got to learn. There's that level. I'm not saying you don't discipline your children, but you got to let them scuff their knees sometimes. You got to let them do something stupid every now and again, and
Right.
and toughen them up. I think it was Jordan Peterson said that's one of the biggest issues with a lot of kids today is that the parents didn't let them go break an arm. I mean, like that's just what you got to do sometimes to learn. Okay, well, I'm not going to do that again.
There's some of them that's the only way they're going to learn.
Yeah.
And the other ones you can just kind of nudge along and they'll be fine. But
So, I think I got another question for you, Mike. I don't know, some of our listeners may have kids with special needs, and working in the school system, part of my time was spent in the self-contained classroom with special needs kids. And what is that struggle like? Is that a struggle? Is that a challenge to raise a kid with special needs, or?
It was for Daniel because he had such great needs that we were actually homeschooling the 4 oldest children, and then we brought Daniel into the house. And he initially came in as foster care. He had to go to occupational therapy, physical therapy, and the closest place was an hour away. So it required my first wife to take him to those meetings all the time, which then initially the kids would hop in the van and do homeschooling in the car there, but it got to the point where the kids sometimes saw that they were getting cheated out of time because of so much effort that we had for Daniel. But that was at the initial stage. Eventually, they came to be helpers. They came to be almost caretakers to some extent. We never wanted our children to have to babysit the other children. It wasn't their job. We as parents had the children. It was our responsibility to take care of them. One of the things that I've seen as a teacher now, we have 10, 11-year-olds that are babysitting their 3 and 4-year-olds at home. But I think my children really appreciated and understood special needs kids. So when they saw them elsewhere, they seemed to have a compassionate heart, a better understanding. So I think in that regard, I think it was probably the most positive thing for our family, for the children, to be able to be around a special needs child and know what kind of care. And I know that they saw the love that we shared with Daniel, because even to this day, he's born in 91, so however old that is. I mean, still.
He would be 31, 32. I'll be 33 in March, born in 90. So
And so, I mean, he's
Hey, youngin.
he's still in diapers. He's still he hasn't progressed any. He just is a giant baby, but the kids still love him.
what can you give encouragement to parents that may have special needs kids, like the ones, because I see parents all the time that they're at their wits' end with some of their kids, special needs kids, because of behavior issues, or like you said, having to take them to OT, PT, speech, every therapy that they can possibly go to. Is there encouragement, and can you give encouragement to those parents?
Well, I think that the key is that there's always hope that those children are always going to be taken care of somehow. I don't understand. Can't quite understand somebody being able to deal with that without the Lord, without getting the strength from the Lord, because it takes a lot of patience, it takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of effort, and you get that kind of security, that peace from every once in a while just getting away and just praying about this situation, because it's tough. There was some times where trying to take care of Daniel, trying to go on vacation and trying to figure out how to fit in the wheelchair, and in some cases we couldn't go certain places because of them, and the children knew that. And I know there were some times where they were upset, but to know that it's still their child, and I know some have mental issues and it hard to deal with. And without going into a whole lot of detail, as I subbed today, there was a little fella in one of the classrooms that started off this morning with a really bad day, and he saw me in the hallway, and he come over and hugged me to get away from the aide that was with him, because he didn't want to be with. And I've dealt with the little boy before. They just want love. Again, it's tough, and it does cause sometimes marital issues. When we first adopted Daniel, when we first took Daniel in, I was not on board. We had enough children at the time, and taking on a special needs child was not in my plans. But as we grew, I think it strengthened the family as a whole. So it is tough.
Well, and it's hard because they communicate in their own way.
Yes.
Whether they're verbal or nonverbal. I think of kids that I work with daily doing PE, and some of them are verbal, but they're special needs. And they try to communicate, but people don't understand their feelings. And I think that's why sometimes people get frustrated. Maybe parents, especially as their kids are young, kindergarten, first, second grade. I think back to when I was in the self-contained classroom, and I remember watching a parent sit down just crying in the middle of our classroom, not knowing what to do with their kid, because she just couldn't understand his communication at that time. And that's a struggle. And I think that would be, y'all correct me if I'm wrong, but would that be the same for any kid, whether special needs or not? They all communicate
No, you're right. They
in
do.
a different way, and you have to learn how to communicate with them.
But you know how that communication comes is that love.
Yeah.
Because when you have that relationship and that love for that child, you know how they're communicating to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes I feel that way too. Sometimes I'll bring this up as well. I don't want to change the subject, but it's on my mind right now. But, sometimes people misunderstand Wyatt sometimes, right? I know he's a spaz. Sometimes he's, but if you really know Wyatt, he's all about love.
Oh, yeah.
He loves people, and you can feel that. And I know that as a parent because I have that relationship with him and I know how he is every day. And I know that he loves people. And sometimes people misunderstand him. Sometimes, just the way he communicates.
I'm guilty.
Yeah.
I mean, when you first came to the church and I was working in the children's department, I saw Wyatt as a challenge.
Right.
But now I love him to death.
Right. I mean, and that's what he is, and he'll show that love right back to you.
yeah.
Definitely.
And
He's got a huge heart.
right, and that's where sometimes, as us as parents, we have to know that. And you know, when he'd get in trouble with teachers or this or that, and you're like, really, Wyatt? Come on, you know. But when I know him now he's 13 now, you know, and now sometimes if he does get in trouble, it's not always Wyatt, what did you do? And it's like, okay, let's hear the whole story and let's see what they thought, what was their interpretation of your action.
Yeah.
So, but I think that really goes back to really knowing your child, really knowing, you know, even special needs, you know, because he has speech, you know, he goes to speech all the time and tries to help better with his speech. And so it's just really knowing your child. I think that's the true key.
I think that's, again, as I was preparing for this, we talk about the character of our child. And, and it's our responsibility to develop that character, that they're going to have their own personality. And once that character has been developed and you understand it, then they've earned your trust. And so as you get stories from teachers, you get stories from whomever, and you have to give the child the opportunity to be able to present their case, because when it's things that are out of the norm, and same thing happened with a couple of my older children. My oldest one graduated valedictorian, was a straight A student, but there was a couple of issues at school that were completely out of character, at least what was accused of, and so I went to the school with the full understanding that that's not Timothy, that's not my son. And as I find out the whole story, then I find out that really it was an issue with the teacher and a personality thing. But I had to trust Timothy. I didn't go in there and say, what do we need to do to fix Timothy? I went in there to say, what do we need to do to fix this situation?
Right.
Because it doesn't sound like my son.
Yeah, and we hear that, and I heard that all the times on the streets as well, right? I mean, you hear that, my kid doesn't lie.
Yeah.
I know my kid, they don't lie. Well, we can reverse that and say, yes, they do. You know, sometimes we know that they do, but as parents, we really got to know that our children. We really need to know their character. And sometimes Autumn got in trouble too. You know, my first instinct was, no, she didn't. She didn't do that. But then I sit back and kind of think, you know, just a couple minutes. And I'm like, okay, now what did she do? Or what did he do? Or, you know, what'd they do? So I don't know where I'm going with it, but I just really think it's really important. I'm glad that I do have a good relationship with my kids and know them and really know their personality, because they're two different personalities.
But that's where you take that time to spend individual with them,
Right.
to break it down. You're lucky you got 2. I've had 6. And you really have to break out time. I mean, you have to say, okay, this day I'm doing something with this one. And
Right, and you have to.
You have to.
Yep.
Because you have to get rid of your selfishness, I think, because sometimes as well, like I sit back and be like, man, I want to do this, and I want to go hunting, I want to go fishing, I want to go do this. When is there time for me? Mm-hmm. I think there is an important time for you, but I think it's a very, very fine line, because right now in their childhood development, it's very important to be involved in their life.
Yeah.
Right. You're gonna have time later.
Right.
You will, and you can't make. That's the one thing I'm working on still, and I mentioned it even last podcast is realizing when it's the time to put aside what I want to do and spend that time with my daughter and build that relationship. It's the same thing that we're called to do with God and Jesus, is take time. And if you don't do it on almost just a daily basis, even just a little bit, right? It doesn't have to be anything major, but even just a tiny bit of time to actually sit and listen or sit and talk, you won't have that relationship. I think is the key word that I wanted to target on that you were saying, because that's how you understand how they communicate. That's how you understand how what might actually be happening elsewhere based on other interactions with other people. And then going, and not just in the home. You have to be, going to the sporting events or going to the things that they're doing with other people and seeing what's actually happening there. Because I think far too often, as I know we've heard people say about the church, as they look at church as almost like a babysitting type situation. They just take the kid, drop the kid off at church, and don't pay any attention to what's happening. And they're missing out on opportunities to get a relationship with their child, to see what the child's doing, to see how they're interacting with other people and friends and not friends. That's just as important too, is how bad situations can go. And those are all little things that I keep telling myself I'm going to do, but I keep continually missing the opportunities. And then afterwards I'm like, oh man, I don't know why I was, didn't just say, yeah, I'll drop whatever I'm doing right now. It's important, but it's not as important. And just this couple days ago, Harmony, in the morning, it's like 7:30 in the morning, and I'm trying to get ready and make breakfast and do all this stuff. And Harmony's got all her stuff on. She's like, I'm going out. We're going to build a snowman. Come on. I'm like, I got too much to do. I can't build a snowman this morning. There's just so much going on. And she went out and she tried to build one by herself, and she built a little one. And when I was done, and I'm like, I should have just gone out there. I mean, it would have been fine if there was some extra dishes in the sink and a couple extra things.
Right.
Should have just gone and built a darn snowman.
Yeah, and then, and this is funny. For me, having, what kind of makes my day is a lot of times I get to pick up Wyatt from school. And it's kind of fun. I mean, I enjoy it now. At first I'm like, I don't want to wait here. I have to get here like 20 minutes ahead of time so I can miss the buses. I can miss this traffic. I can find a parking spot, and it was stressful at first, but now I'm like, okay.
It's kind of fun.
It's kind of fun. Wyatt's running up going, oh yeah. And then, do fist bumps and like, man, how was your day? Oh, Wyatt's always, my day's fantastic, and it's just kind of fun.
He's always positive.
He's always positive.
I think back to growing up, and real recent, my dad told me, he said, do you know what my favorite times with you were? I said, no, Dad, watching me come win ball, coming to watch us win ball games, whatever. He goes, I enjoyed watching you play and win. He said, but my favorite times were when we went away for the weekend to deer camp, and we didn't kill a single thing except for spending time together.
Yep.
And I was like, oh, those were good times.
And they were good times.
That's so much better than looking up in the stands and seeing him at a sporting event.
Right.
But it was the quality time that we spent that I was like, oh, those are great. And working car duty at school, I see so much quality time that parents miss out on because they'd rather be attached to their phones than do like you and talk to their kids.
Well, see, that's the struggle that I had with 4 of mine. I only had them every other weekend and about 2 hours on a Wednesday night. So I really had to make sacrifices in a short period of time and to hit each kid.
Yeah.
Teaches you the importance of it, for
It
sure.
does.
Yeah.
And I seen real quick that I had to do it and made it a priority. It had to be a priority.
Yeah.
We had the same situation after the divorce, and we had 4 the same, and they came up from Florida to here to visit, and trying to figure out places to plug them all in and find activities for them to be able to plug in. It's tough, and fortunately, it was during the summer. Being a teacher, I had time off, made it a little bit easier, obviously, to be able to spend time with them. But one of the things that my other son, Stephen, had wrote me back about childhood that really kind of makes an impact to me now. I didn't really think about it. He said that there was always so much going on in the house, and there was so much activity going on. He said that we didn't really seem to ever really connect as a family. And as a result of not being able to connect as a family, he said now we all live within 15 minutes of one another, and the only time we see each other is on the holidays.
I can see that.
Yeah. Wow.
That's was kind of eye-opening. I always thought, we got the kids were always playing with one another, and they were all running around the house. But obviously, they didn't see the connection with the parents, with my first wife and I connecting with them while they're at the house. And when I was the sports guy. My oldest son is not a sports guy other than playing soccer. He's the video guy. And I tried to bring him to the ballpark. He didn't like it, so he kind of quit the sports thing. So I just was at the ballpark all the time with my other children who liked it, and I spent a lot of time with them at the expense of not being with some of the other kids as much as I should have been.
This one here about fell off my list here, but since you guys brought it up, because it works real good here, it says, the relationship you have with your children shapes the structure and function of their brain.
That happens at all stages of life. I know
Yep.
most people say, and it's true, the very, very beginning is incredibly important. Like those first 3-4 years, that's like you're building your foundation of your house. And if you mess that up, your house is going to be in tough shape for a while. You can still recover. I'm not saying it's impossible, but you got work to do. But that's, and I think a point to remember too is it doesn't always have to be what they want to do.
No, yeah.
Something, Daniel, what you were just saying, Daniel, tell me, what your dad was talking about. My father passed away, almost 10 years ago now, actually over 10 years ago now. And with his health too, he wasn't, even for the 20 some years, he wasn't as what most people would see like a traditional father. I had to almost be more the father to him. When I was a teenager, I was shaving him because he couldn't shave himself. Like that's a totally flipped dynamic. But what I remember, one of the fond memories that just popped into my head was, the Minnesota State Fair. It's this big event. It's huge. It's one of the bigger ones in the country. Not the biggest, but it's a big one. And one of the things he did every single year, the first day of the fair, he would take the day off of work. I think it opened on a Thursday. So he'd take the day off work. We'd get up to the fair at like 6 a.m. because he wanted to be up there to see, the cattle coming in and all the farm stuff. And because he was a farmer, he wanted to see all that. And he'd drag me and my brother, and kids don't like getting up at 6 a.m. and going into the town to go to the fair, but sitting down and having breakfast at the, whatever breakfast place with all the farmers and all that type of stuff, and just connecting with him.
It's called a cafe.
Yeah, probably is.
I don't know what y'all called it up there, but it's cafe.
Cafe
it
around
was.
here.
I'm sure it was.
Yeah.
Because again, I was too young to even remember exactly what the place was, but it was at the fair. It's the only place open, and it's all the people who are like the bones of the fair are there having breakfast at that point. There's none of the crowds. There's none of the other people. None of the tourists are there, and I just remember those times, and it wasn't something I wanted to do. It was something he wanted to do. And then we'd spend the entire day at the fair, doing all the fun stuff and all the rest of it as well. But I remember the breakfasts, and that sticks with me.
Well, that was like going up to the firehouse. My dad was fire chief, and at first I was like, oh, I got to go back up here again after school. But after a while, I wound up loving it. And I think that's why I did 6 years in the fire service because of it. But, it's something I wound up loving to do because of the time that we just spent sitting up there and learning different things, at first it started out as not something I really wanted to go do. But
Being dragged up there.
Yeah. But it turned into something that I loved getting to go do. He'd pick me up at school in his fire chief's car, and then we'd go up to the firehouse. That was the coolest thing to me, that I got to be picked up in a car with lights and sirens to go sit.
Almost all kids love lights and sirens.
Yeah, they do. So
That was Harmony's favorite part, actually. So we took her to the state fair when she was real little, and we were there late because my wife actually played a show there. So we did music, then we watched another band, and we actually were there when the fair closed. So it was probably almost 10, 11 o'clock at night, super late. And, Harmony was in her stroller most of the day. She was okay. But I swear, she lit up at night because all of a sudden all the people are gone. And now all the trucks full of food and sodas and beer and everything come rolling down the lanes. And they're all lit up at night. And she was just pointing at every one of them going by. This is the coolest part of the fair.
food parade.
Yep. She's like, look at that big truck. Look at that big truck.
Well, Mike, I had one for you just from your little story you had from your little one there. But it says children learn more from what you are, more than what you teach.
Absolutely. We're the example setters, and sometimes we are positive examples, and sometimes we think we're positive examples, and we're not. I think I've shared before, and maybe last week I talked about probably the most eye-opening thing that happened was my son, who's currently living on the streets now, told me, I guess he was probably 14, 15 years old, out on the step going into the shed. And to this day, I don't know why he said it, but he looked at me just as sincere as can be and said, "Dad, you're just a big hypocrite." And he was referring to my Christian walk. And I don't really know what I was doing or what he saw at the time. But something in my life at that time was not the example he needed to see. And so we have to be real careful about watching our anger, watching the comments that we make, how we treat our spouses, how we treat our children, our other children, because we're being watched all the time. I just know that as a Christian, I've been approached by non-Christians a couple of times referring to my Christian walk, fortunately in a positive way, but they're watching and they will remember and they will point out to you real quick, and it'll make you upset because I was upset. I don't know how I reacted. I don't remember how I reacted. I just know my heart was pierced when he said that. And I had to kind of go back and do some self-examining and self-evaluation to figure out what was I doing as a parent that was setting such a negative example, at least in his eyes, in my life. And it took me time to go back into the Word and back into prayer, because during that time, I was so busy at the church as the deacon and teaching and all the committees and so forth. I was so busy working at church, I wasn't working for the Lord, and obviously he saw that.
So if you could go back and change one thing, and it doesn't have to be just one, but if you could go back and change something, especially since the other four guys here have daughters, what would you change raising a daughter or your sons?
Well, it's not a fair question to my daughters, because I was very blessed with both my daughters. My oldest daughter, we used to just kind of pick at her because she just literally slept, ate, and sang, because she'd go in her bedroom and sing, and she sang at church all the time. She was a good student. One of the things that all three of my children that responded back to me said is that we put way too much pressure on them for their grades. That's the one element that they remember. My oldest one, it just came natural to them. The other two underneath there, they all graduated high in rankings in their classes, but we punished them extensively for not getting a good grade, which was wrong. Looking back, and then my other daughter was the one that was killed in the car accident. She was absolutely not a problem. She was as studious as could be. She graduated from high school with an associate's degree. So I think that if I could go back in time and make any kind of corrections, I'd spend more time talking with my kids from a very early age. I think, Ray, you're on target with Harmony, just with talking to her and having good conversations. And it's never too late to have those conversations, because I have those conversations with them now that they're older, but I really wish I could rewind the clock and really get into their heads and say, evaluate me as a dad. Tell me what I need to do. You're not always going to agree with my choices. You're not always going to agree with the discipline. You're always going to know that I do it in love, and that's one of the things that all three of them did indicate, that they knew that I did it out of love. But I really wish I got to know my kids better and not just simply knew they were my kids.
You know, I've said this before too, and here's something that we kind of recently changed, and it kind of hits on what you said is, it's almost to the point where we almost lower our expectations a little bit. You know, like you said, that, you know, these kids have to get straight A's and they got to do this, and we punish them for not getting this. And I've told you this, Jed, and this is what we've kind of done a little bit different, is we kind of set our kids on pedestals. Mm-hmm. And when they mess up, man, we're there. I mean, we're like, why are you messing up and why are you doing this? Well, we're kind of changing a little bit on lowering that expectation a little bit. And I've heard this many times, and many parents have said that, is, you know, what are the things that you would have changed? And it's almost to that aspect of, I would have lowered my expectations a little bit. You know, they're not going to be perfect. And this kind of goes into my little pet peeve, and I don't want to change the subject, but it is about kids. Sometimes we let kids dictate how we parent. And that's one of my pet peeves right now.
Explain that.
Because we're letting the kids make choices where we still need to be the parent. And it's almost to a point where they're almost doing whatever they want to do. And for instance, we have some of that situation is going on a little bit, and we got to set the ground rules and saying, you know, I'm going to be your parent. I am the parent. I am going to make the rules. And we talk about the love. We talk about the relationship. We talk about all the stuff that we have been talking about. Very important things. I think one of the other important things is that we still have to be the parent. We still have to be in charge. We still have to set those ground rules. And I think the kids can't dictate what they think is right. What they think that we need to do is be better parents. And I'm trying to get to the point, but I can't get it all out. But it's almost to the point where parents are almost sometimes giving up and allowing them to just say, okay, that's okay, yep. Not lowering the expectation so much that they're going to be on the bad road.
Yeah.
But lowering them enough to say, hey, I know that you make mistakes. I know you're going to mess up. I know you're going to fail at things. But not letting them dictate what they're going to, I guess, parent, you know, trying to parent us.
I've heard that, and I almost fell into this too, and you know, because my wife and I were in the kind of the new age movement, and there's a lot of push there in new age, new thinking, new schooling to be like, okay, what do you think your punishment should be?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
What would be good for you? And that might actually work for some kids. Some
Right.
kids might be self-actualized enough to be like, well, this is what I deserve. But I flipped, and my wife right away was like, we're not doing that. Don't do that. That's dumb. I'm like, okay. She calls it like it is. But one of the things that I've done, and and for right or wrong, but a lot of times, you know, I punish my daughter, and she'll be all pouty and sad or crying or whatever, and then I'll just ask her, I say, do you think that I punished you too much? Do you think you don't deserve what you just got? And to a T, she's always like, yeah, like I deserve it. I know, I'm right. Yeah, I don't get that cookie because I did this, or I don't get to play video games for a week because I did that, and just giving her that gut check after I've punished her to be like, do you think that was too far? Do you think that was too much? Do you think you deserve these things back? And whether she actually believes it or not, she's just saying it because she thinks I want to hear it. She does think about it for a minute. She goes, oh yeah, you're right.
I did mess up.
Yeah, she's like, I made a mistake. I do deserve to have a punishment, and this is what it is.
Yeah, and I see that, Mike, your wheels are turning there. What?
Yeah, one of the things that Ray just mentioned is that sometimes we assign a discipline, a punishment, and it's so short-termed, and for them it doesn't really affect them. It just, this too shall pass and I'll go. It has to be, as Ray said, earned back. It needs to be applied. It needs to hurt to a point where, but probably all of us have played a game with somebody who changed the rules in the middle of the game, and you get frustrated because it was like, wait, that wasn't the rule.
Yeah, Wyatt hates that. Wyatt hates it.
I say we all have kids. They did that when they were little, every time.
I want you to think about for a moment our children, because sometimes we as parents change the rules in the middle of the game. And we need to be, if we're going to apply consistency in our home, we need to have clear choices, clear consequences for those choices, and pure application of the if they have to suffer the consequences. And it may be something like you've got daughters that are driving, and it may be that, all right, you're going, because you were supposed to be home at 11 o'clock, and I'm going to give you a 15-minute fudge time. But after that, for every minute, here's the consequence. You're going to lose your driving privileges for a week. But I got a job. Hey, if I only had one means of transportation and it broke down and I had to go to work, I'd figure out a way to go. So if it causes you to get an Uber, if it causes you to have somebody come pick you up, that's the consequence. You need to earn that back, but we need to make sure that those rules are fully in place beforehand. Oftentimes we come up with these creative disciplines for our children after the fact, and we usually do it out of an emotion.
We play defense. Yeah. We wind up playing defense. And
So are you saying that fudge time's like my time, like 10:45 instead, not 11:45?
Well, and again, that consistency that they know that there's no backing off of it. If it's a week, it's not 6 days.
it is.
It's a week.
Oh, they know.
Yeah.
They know.
Yeah, they know they don't call my bluff. I'm not bluffing. If I say it's going to happen, it's going to happen. Yeah. And I make sure it does happen. You know, if I tell you to, if I can tell you to do something, and if you don't do that certain thing, here's the consequences, and they don't do it, it's going to be consistent. And my consequences are going to be consistent throughout both kids, and they both know that. And, and sometimes, as us as parents too, I mean, we show this love, we show this care, we and I talked about this a little bit earlier, and I've talked to Jed with you this multiple times. We try to get our kids things that we've never had as kids, right?
Right.
And that has been something that I have been working on a lot, because that's what we wanted to do, was provide for them for the things that we never had the opportunities, or the itemized things, or stuff like that. We didn't really show them that, life is going to be hard, and here's a quote that John Roberts said, which is the Chief of Justice, and this nails it on the head, I think, because sometimes as parents, we want to cuddle them, we want to hold them, we want to protect them. We need them to be safe. We don't want to hurt their feelings. We don't want their feelings to get hurt. We don't want them to feel loneliness. We don't want to feel this, right? But with this quote, when I heard this and I read it, and I'm like, you know what? This is so true. And this is sometimes I think I want to do, with our kids, and because he wrote this for a middle age or his middle or junior high graduation for his kids, or junior high graduation. He wrote this. And he says, from time to time in years to come, I hope you will be treated unfairly, so that you will come to know the value of justice. I hope that you will suffer betrayal, because that will teach you the importance of loyalty. Sorry to say, but I hope you will be lonely from time to time, so that you don't take friends for granted. I wish you bad luck again from time to time, so that you will be conscious of the role of the chance in life, and understand that your success is not completely deserved, and that the failure of others is not completely deserved either. And when you lose, and you will from time to time, I hope every now and then your opponent will gloat over your failure. It is a way for you to understand the importance of sportsmanship. I hope you'll be ignored, so that you know the importance of listening to others. And I hope that you will have just enough pain to learn compassion. And whether I wish these things or not, they're going to happen. And whether you benefit from them or not will depend on your ability to see the message in your misfortunes. When I looked over that, I think almost it's like teaching, and that was a question for you, Mike, that I had for you is, have you ever taught your child tough love?
Oh, absolutely.
And I think sometimes that this applies to them too, because this is what the world is going to be about. And as us as parents, we got to teach them this is the world. It is a cruel world. And sometimes we have to not just hold on to them so much and protect them and say, I don't want your feelings to get hurt. I don't want you to feel loneliness. I don't want you to feel all this. But I think sometimes we're taking that away from them, because as us as growing up and when we did, we felt some of those things, and when we still do as adults, we still feel maybe that loneliness, or or somebody beats you on something and they are throwing it in your face. How do we learn from those? And I think this is a time that we teach our kids these things. It's going to just help them more in this world, and we know how cruel this world is.
Well, me and Haley had a talk the other day, and I don't know exactly why it come up, but I told Haley, I said, you're at the age that, yes, you're going to be able to make your own decisions. And I said, I want you to make your own decisions now, because I want you to deal with the consequences of your decision. I said, I'm your parent. I'll be your parent until the day I'm gone. And I said, I'm going to sit there and I'm going to say, that wasn't right, or I'm going to try to straighten it out. But I said, I don't want to make that decision for you. A good friend of mine, Richard Nevels, lives down the road from me. His grandkids, I love the way he handles his grandkids. He's got bukus of them, but the ones I've been around are 4 to 8, 12 years old. Anytime they're around, Papa, can I go do this? You can do anything you want. Just realize that there's a consequence for what you do.
Mm-hmm.
So they learn.
That's been my saying for years.
Yeah.
You can do anything once as long as you're willing to suffer the consequences. But Derek, I think that you're right that because we have this mindset that, we didn't have, so we need to provide for our kids. Mm-hmm. We have inadvertently, if you will, created entitled children.
Yes.
We have, and we in the school system we see that all the time. That it gets to the point. Well, I'm supposed to have that. I need that because someone else. You haven't earned it. You haven't done anything to do it. Right. I just know that for my children, we helped them pay for their first car. Once they had their car, they took control of everything. They paid their I didn't pay half their insurance. They paid their insurance. They paid their gas. They paid their repairs. If they broke down on the road and they needed a tow, they paid the tow. We didn't take care of the bill for them. Oh, that's mean. You're just not taking care of your kids. No, you just have to understand that this is real world, and you're going to be out there, and you need to prepare. So you got a job. You need to make sure you're setting money aside, so when you break down, you got money to take care of that. Mm-hmm. Or I could just simply go help them out again and help them out again. And then every time they get into a problem, what are they expecting?
Mm-hmm.
Help them out.
Help out. And if you don't, you're the mean, nasty parent that doesn't love them. And you really do love them by teaching them you are responsible for your own choices, your actions. And we're supposed to do that as parents, to build that character in them, to be able to make those kinds of choices.
Yeah, they got to have a skin in the game.
Right.
And it's funny because my buddy Andy called me too, because his son is driving now, and they got him a car and this, and he asked me what I did for Autumn, or what's her skin in the game, and he talked to my other buddy Chris, and trying to get opinions and on how to have them be responsible and what is their skin in the game on that, and ours is, she's worked at the ranch. She doesn't have to prove to me that she's a hard worker. I mean, I know she works hard, and she works hard all the time. But I told Andy, I says, our number one goal was for her driving was her grades. I says, your job right now is to do good in school. That's your job. And we'll pay for certain things because that's your payment of you doing that job at school. And so, it was a little different. He got a different opinion from Chris, and that some people paid half, or his kids paid half, and what he did was, you owe this much money, and Chris would put all this money away, And then when they graduated and says, here you go, here's money to start off with because, now you have skin in the game. And sometimes we have to do that because we are producing entitlement. And that's how I felt. I'm like, our kids are spoiled.
Yeah.
And they are. And that's the thing that we have to stop as parents and realize this world is going to be tough, and we grew up in this world, and we're still in this world. And I listened to a podcast on the No Sanity Required, Brody Holloway, and here's his little quote, and it was so funny. I told Autumn this before we came here, too. I says, it's almost, we don't want our kids to do tough things. And he says, I'm not going to take all the weights out of the gym because that's the whole purpose of a gym, are the weights. Hard work, right?
Yeah.
You go to the gym to work out because that's hard work. And for our kids, sometimes what we're doing is we're taking those weights away from them and going, it's okay. I'm going to lift these weights for you. We can't do that.
You go back just a few generations ago, and by the time you were 16, 17, 18, you're like, I am leaving to start my own thing because I'm an adult now. It wasn't a help me mom, help me dad. It was a, I'm going out, and yeah, maybe it was going to college but again, go a couple generations beyond that. That wasn't really in the plans. I mean, it was, you were chomping at the bit to create your own thing, to create your own success. And I'm not saying that about any of our kids per se, but I think that's a society issue right now, is that it is trying to provide for them so much, they are then entitled, and they're like, okay, what are you going to help me do now? Like, how are you going to help me afford to go to school? And how are you going to help me afford to buy a house after I do that? And how are you going to help me this and that? And it's again, I'm not blaming any one thing in particular. I think it's a cyclical thing that happens with societies as we get more affluent, as we get more things, as we have more wealth, we are able to do these things. But there's a downside to it too.
Well, there is, and we remind our kids all the time that when we first got married, and I think everyone around this table can feel the same way, is that we were broke. Like when we first got married, and that's what we said. I said we went to the dollar store all the time. We had the dollar menu at McDonald's. We were broke, and I said our first cars as being married, they were donated to us because it went through like 2 generations, and then we got the leftover car. They gave it to us for free because now it had 200,000 miles on it, and we had to put transmissions in like every car that we got. But the reason why we're at the spot that we're at right now is because we worked hard and we got to where we wanted to be in life. And we've almost taken that away from our kids.
Yeah. That's right.
Is they don't realize, because a lot of people do that, is they only see you now. They don't see what you've gone through or who you were or what took you to this place to where you're at now. They just see you as now in this moment. And that's what the kids do too, because when we were doing that and hustling and working hard, they were small and babies. They didn't get to see that. And now they see this life going, well, mom and dad make good money and they got a nice house and they got this. Well, these kids are in the microwave generation where they want things now, where your generation, Mike, and the end of I think we've kind of fallen that generation, is that crockpot generation. It takes time and hard work to get where we're at now. And as parents, we're taking that hard work and we're taking that away from them because we're going, here you go, here are the things that I never had, and we're spoiling them so much that we're taking that away from them.
Well, that was like, we owned an ambulance company, and it floors people when I tell people I started working for the ambulance company at 16, because that's unheard of. Like, you have to be 18 to work on the ambulance, right?
Well, because Daddy, I'm just...
But that was... Yeah, because we owned it.
Because he was entitled.
He's got a master's.
But that was how I paid for, like, my first truck.
Right.
Like, Dad bought me my first truck, but I went and worked.
Right.
Every day after school, after practice, washing 5 ambulances, making sure they were all stocked, cleaning the crew quarters, you know, every day until I was 18 to then I could finally start working on the ambulance. But I mean, that was it. That was how, you know, like, yeah, I had a pretty decent truck for a teenager, but I busted my tail to get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I started when I was 14, just doing anything I
Hauling
could.
cattle at 14.
I was hauling cattle at 14. That's true. Hauling cattle, and I was trading cattle. And probably by the time I was 17, I probably had over 150 head of cows.
right.
Yeah.
I was lucky enough to have parents that had land that didn't have cattle at the time, so it worked.
But I mean, and when we're talking about all of this right now, and you know, and I appreciate you, Mike, coming in and doing this and giving us some of this wisdom that we look at this right now and we see hard work for us as parents.
Oh yes, it's a different time.
Because we're talking about, you know, the love. We're talking about building a relationship. We're talking about spending time with our kids, showing our kids tough love, and we have papers here and list of things that we need to do as parents, and going, what's the right way? But really, after talking to you, Mike, and all of this stuff is it's work, and we got to work at it as parents.
Trial and error.
Yep.
It's a 24/7 all the time, and there's no right answers, and there's no secret formula for one child that fits all. You know,
Every child's different.
every single child's got a different personality. Society's different. You know, we didn't have the kind of fear when our children went someplace for safety purposes. Our environment was safer back then. So you all have to deal with not only allowing your children some freedom to go out, but then you also have to have the concerns about the choices they make with the environment that they're currently living in, which makes it even that much more difficult. And so, but you do have to. One of the when do you let go? When
when do you let go?
When do you go? There's a point in time where they have developed over the course of their time a trust, hopefully, and if they haven't violated that trust, and I know that in some cases we've got some situations even in this room where we've had some that have violated the trust. And once you violate that trust, it takes forever to rebuild it, and it's a hard thing to do. And but they have to understand they are responsible for restoring the trust. That it's not your responsibility. They have to make the choices, and they have to understand the consequences for their choices because they lost that trust. But if they've got it, you know, you said your children are pretty good kids and you're pretty well trustworthy. I know my oldest one, Timothy, when he graduated from high school, we gave him permission to go out, and he didn't have to be back until 3 o'clock. That was his curfew for graduation night. He went to a party at the lake, having a good time. Some kids brought some beer. He didn't feel comfortable. He left. He went to a house that was having a graduation party, hung around there for a while. Somebody brought beer. He ended up coming home at 10:45. He said, everywhere I went, they were drinking beer, Dad. I didn't want to be around it. I was so proud of him that time, for him to make those kind of choices, to know that we established that criteria. I had trust that when he said he was going to go someplace, he went someplace. When my daughter said she was going to go someplace. But in today's society, you got to provide that opportunity for them. But again, as I said earlier, there has to be those consequences. I've established a rule. This is it. I'm trusting you. If you can follow that and fulfill that trust, we're going to have a great relationship. If you mess it up, we're going to have issues.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
I'm going to
Judy.
slide this in real
Okay,
quick before
slide
we
it
move
in.
on because this, I didn't know where this was going to fit in. It's perfect for this situation. It's not what you do for your children, but what you have taught them to do for themselves that will make them successful human beings.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
That's true.
yeah.
Yeah, because even I think me and Jed are in the same boat right now. Our daughters right now in 4 months, they're out of high school. They're on their own. I mean, really, they got these goals and these dreams and these ambitions. And right now, we've been slowly letting her make her own decisions, like you
Yes.
said, right?
Yep.
You know, even to the point where we could talk about church, you know, on Wednesday night. Hey, I want to go to a youth group with my friends. Okay. Let me see what kind of church you're you know, what you're picking, or why do you want to go there? What's going on? Mm-hmm. And, you know, I said, I'll let you make that decision. You know, you want to go try that? Go ahead. You know, and it's just little stuff here and there, just little simple decisions.
Little simple decisions, and you just got to let them.
Right.
to
And like
make
right
that
now,
right.
this weekend, she's house sitting. She's never spent the night on house sitting, and it's for Natania's sister.
Okay.
And so, you know, there's a horse and a donkey and, you know, a dog and all that stuff to take care of. But through this entire time of having her, she has never actually stayed at somebody's house to house sit it. She's gone there to take care of stuff and just come back home. And we did the same thing. Here are the rules, right? This is not our house. There is no friends over. There is no nothing, you know. And you know, we got to set those ground rules. But we, at the same point, we're kind of letting go a little bit.
Absolutely.
And letting them see what kind of decisions they're going to make as of right now, because we're still here.
Yeah.
Right here. You
Right
know, we
here.
could still boom, boom, boom. But in 4 months, they're going to be making their own decisions, being in college, being, you know, like your daughter's going to Iowa. My daughter's going to Iowa for the summer on you know, being an assistant horse wrangler at a church camp and going to the university. And, you know, it's like, here's a time that, you know, like you did, you set all these examples and all of these things that you did for your kids. And now you get to see if you made that impact in their lives.
Yep. And I think if you can get them to the point where they know that you know they are going to fail.
Oh, yeah.
And then to the best thing to do, and again, I try to impress this upon my daughter all the time when she makes a mistake. I said, you know, what did you learn from that? And come to me. Come talk to me. I will help you. I may also include some chastisement with that help, but I will always be there to help you, you know? And I don't know if your parents did the same things mine did, but I remember when I was a teenager, you know, one of the things my mom always said, she says, you know, I know you're going to go out, you're going to do dumb things. So it's still longer ago for me than you might think too. But they, you know, she says, if you're ever in trouble, call me. She's like, I might be upset with you, but I'm never going to not come and help you. Mm-hmm. I'm never going to not come to be there for you. And you know what I was going to mention earlier, that because we were talking about how it's so different for our kids now than it was for us. I'm like, do you think any of our kids know what a garden hose tastes like?
Right.
Because I
My
say
kids
that,
do.
and you
I
know,
make sure.
you exactly know what garden hose water tastes like.
The water out of the garden hose
Yes.
or the garden hose itself?
Isn't it the same? What's the difference?
It's really good. Yeah. Like it's good on a hot summer day.
I would bet if for sure, I don't know, Daniel, if your parents did this, but for the rest of us, I'm sure there was the go outside, don't come home till the sun goes down.
Ours were the street lights.
Yeah, or till the streetlights come on.
it
I'm
was-
going to lock the door. Don't come back.
That's exactly what my mom was. Yeah, like on the summer or the weekends, 8 a.m. You're out the door. Door's locked. Oh, it's lunchtime. Here, I'll open the window. Here's your PB&J. There's the water. See you later.
Leave me alone.
Like that, I mean, that was it. I mean, yeah. So yeah, no, I grew up that way. Don't worry.
You're good.
Yeah, that's good.
But kids
I grew up
nowadays,
that way.
they can't. You
They
can't do
can't.
that.
They
You'd
don't-
probably get your kids taken away if you did that.
Well, yeah, they don't want them to get hurt. They don't want them to, you know, feel failure. They don't want them to feel all this stuff.
Yeah.
And that's how we're learning is through failure, and we still do as adults.
So I have a question for all of you that are raising children right now.
Oh, that's not me.
You can respond.
Please step outside the room. This is for
How do you respond to your children when they say, you're making me go to church, and when I get older and I get out of this house, I'm done because you keep making me go to church?
Harmony loves church, so I'll bow out of this one.
Well, you know what? And that was a reverse question because I had that on the list I was going to ask you here, Mike, was, you know,
So I asked
why?
it first.
Yeah, because it is a fine line too. Because you know that's how I grew up. It was Sunday morning, it was Sunday night, it was Wednesday night, it was church camp, it was Awanas, it was so much church that I guess it really changed for me is when I became an adult. Really, not just coming out of the house. I still, you know, because right out of high school, I worked a pipeline. And so I was always working, and then we finished a job in Arizona, and then we were off to Vegas. I was on my own, right out of high school, working the pipeline. And so there was no church there, but I actually went to a couple of churches there and just to try to meet people, you know, and because I was like, I want to meet good people, and that's what I grew up in was church. And I kind of went away from it for a little bit at a short time of my life, and then came back to it. And right now, for our kids, is let me see if I can put this the right way. Because we get into arguments sometime about Sunday morning, about, yeah, hey, you know, we're going to Sunday school, but, you know, and they're, oh, I'm tired, I want to sleep in, why can't we just ever have a break? But my dad growing up was, I don't care about your excuses, you're going to church. Where is that fine line that where we're pushing our kids so much into church that we're pushing them away? Because there could, you know, I've heard a couple stories of some people, some folks that were deacons and that were a lot of things in church and leadership in church. And now their kids are growing, and now they're wishing that they can get their kids back into church. So it's a great question. That's why I wanted to ask you, Mike, but I know you reversed it on me. And I'm trying to find that fine line where I want to show you the importance of church. I want to show you the importance of Jesus. But I don't want to show it in so much that I'm pushing them away from it. Because sometimes, Daniel, because sometimes even as an adult,
Yeah.
I feel the same way. And I'm going to be very honest with you. You know, sometimes I'm like, how much church do I need? I mean, we're doing Wednesday night, we're doing Sunday morning, Sunday school, Sunday night men's, we're doing a podcast where, you know, am I getting burnt out? No. But I'm just saying, you know, where am I, you know, when is it so much that you're pushing away? And maybe you guys can help me on that, because that was my question to Mike, and he reversed it.
When God tells you it's too much.
So I preached a sermon one time, and I started it with, don't raise your children in church. And that kind of got some puzzles. Because you're right, Derek, we push church so much. And I think of, like, me and my siblings, and as far as I can think of, I'm the only one that goes to church still. And so I started with, don't raise your kids in church, and paused to let it sink in. I said, raise them in Christ. Raise your kids to understand the relationship with Jesus over the relationship with a building church like what we go to. Because here's the thing, is the church is not just coming up here, right? The church is the body of believers. And so it's not necessarily that we have to push them to every function that we have at church, whether that's Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, once a month fellowship, Saturday morning breakfast, you know. And that's where I think that we cause our kids, because I see the shift in youth groups is I see about 17, 18-year-olds, junior, seniors in high school leave from the church for a little bit. And even right after graduation, because they've been pushed in drugs so much that we raise them in church and we forgot to show them what a relationship with Jesus looks like.
That's it. That's what I, kind of think too, is now when I sit back too and look, when I go to church so much, is that because I want to? It's not because I'm forced to go here Sunday morning or Sunday night or do all this, because it's because I want to. And it's at building that relationship with Jesus. And now, you nailed it. I really think that's one of the answers to that question is when our children build that relationship with Jesus, we're not forcing them to go to church. They're going, hey, Dad, I want to go to church. That's how Wyatt is right now, because Wyatt's.
But right there that is one of the biggest, is God gave us a choice.
Yeah.
So they have to make a choice too. We can't make the choice for them. So that's one of the biggest answers right there too, is they have to choose to be here. They have to choose that relationship. we don't get to determine, because in the Bible, we have a job to teach them the ways.
Yes.
But if they don't accept it, we done our job. Doesn't mean we have to quit our job, but we done our job. So it can't be held up against us for trying to do what we're supposed to do, and they choose not to do it.
Well, it's funny. I have a Bible verse that goes right with this, Deuteronomy 5:29. Oh, that their hearts would be inclined to fear and keep my commands always, so that it might go well with them and their children forever. Right? That's all God hopes, and if we could just work that out, and I have it now. Harmony loves church, as I said. She was so bummed when she was sick for 2 weeks and couldn't come, and every time, can I go this Wednesday? I'm going to be able to go this Sunday. She reminds me, so this is fifth Sunday, Dad. There's going to be fifth Sunday fellowship after church. She's so excited
She's a
about
Baptist.
it. She is so excited about it. But and I am glad it's that way. I don't know if it'll always be that way. I hope that it will, and it's something that is different for me now, because I'm the same way, Derek. I come because I love to be here. Right. I love to be here with the body of Christ, with the people that are here. And I think that's something that everyone, if someone's listening and you're like, I don't enjoy going to church, maybe you gotta find a different church, because it's not the building, it's not necessarily the pastor, it's the people.
It's the people.
If you find a church with good people that treat you like family, that you
Best
can
friends.
connect with, then you're gonna enjoy being there. And then again, that's why Harmony likes coming too, because she has friends here. She has friends here that are good friends, better than she gets in other places, because she's got friends in some of the other things we do too. But they don't. I've noticed the interactions. They don't treat her the same. They don't talk to her the same. There's just something different between good, godly raised children and how they treat each other and interact with each other than the children in the world who treat each other.
Let me ask y'all this question, and this is for all 5 of y'all, and then listeners at home, if you want to ponder this. Do your kids, or did your kids, see an importance of your relationship with Jesus over your busyness at the church?
I'm working on that, actually, because like I said, two podcasts ago, maybe last podcast, I'm trying to make sure Harmony sees me reading the Bible more. She sees me doing the stuff for Sunday night men's ministry and what I need to, read. I'm not doing that when I'm not, at night when she's sleeping or before she gets up. She sees me doing it, and I tell her, I got to go read my Bible. I got to work on the questions, and I got to work on the class stuff that I'm going to do. But the other step to it is I'm trying to include her some more in that too. If I'm just going to be reading the Bible to study and get ready for class, well then why don't I read it with her? Why don't I talk to her about the questions I'm trying to answer and I'm going through? And
You probably get better answers than what we give you.
She does give good answers.
She does. She really does. So it's something I'm recently trying to get her more involved in my Bible study too. It can be, and it should be, a family time. And you go again. I could always say you go back 100 years, and that was there wasn't just the Bible on the coffee table because it was there. It was there because you actually sat down and everybody read it for a while. And you're like, okay, you're going to read a chapter, or you're going to read this section, and then Mom's going to read the next section, and I'm going to read the next section, and that's missing. Unfortunately, it's just something we don't get to do. But I'm trying to bring some of it back. But man, the world fights you constantly.
So Autumn had an interview for that Bible camp from the director, whoever it was. And she told me how the interview went. And one of the questions to her was, how is your family? How is your relationship with your parents? And she answered him and told me the answer. And she goes, I couldn't hope for better parents. And my dad is always trying to do the right thing. And so maybe, that relationship that I have, I don't show as much as the Bible reading that I should. And that's probably maybe part of, my failure. But she can see my morals that I have, and the way I stand on things is that it is, based on Christ and doing the right things and helping people and always trying to help other people and put their needs before my needs. And so when she said that to him, I was like, maybe that's what you're seeing in me. And that's what my foundation on Christ is doing for me is trying to do the right things all the time and helping people. So not per se that she sees me read the Bible every day or sees me do those things, but now she can witness the actions that I'm taking.
She sees the fruit that's being produced.
Right.
Yeah.
That's just me. What about you, Mike?
Repeat the question.
The reason why I asked the question is because when I look at those responses or those comments from our children that you're going to drive me away from church, we sometimes think about those in terms of when a teenager says that. What if your 7-year-old says that? I don't want to go to church. Does the rules change at that point? And if you think about it, those rules will change because you'll say, well, a 7-year-old, no, you're going to church. Now you're 16 years old, you don't have to go to church, or we're going to let you make your choices. And the way I look at it from Scripture is to tell my children, you are my gift that God gave me, and He gave me a command to train you up. And I'm going to do that to the very best of my ability by setting the standards in my home, in my character, in my moral values, how I conduct myself. And you're not going to forsake the assembly while you're in my home. Now, when you get out of my home and you choose to go out and not go to church, you are not going to guilt me into feeling bad because you don't go to church. Right. I'm not going to force my faith on you. But I am going to do what God commanded me to do, and that is to train you up in the way that He used to be, that you're in the training and the admonition of the Lord. You're not going to like it. It's one of those tough love things. You're not going to like it. You're going to bow up. You're going to get upset. You're going to come to church with an attitude. I'm sorry about that. Most of the time, when your kids come to church with an attitude and they get around the other kids, they're okay.
Yeah, it's all gone.
It's just a matter. And so I don't buy the argument to, well, I'm going to let them choose and give them a warm and fuzzy. That's one of those, to me, that's a non-negotiable event in my house. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like my son who was living with his girlfriend and had a child. They came to visit on the way to Florida, and when they were in my house, they slept in different bedrooms. Dad, we've got a kid. I don't care. In my house, my standard is you're not sleeping together. He was upset. He stayed a couple of days and left. He understood because he knew that was the expectation. He knew that was scriptural. And so there are just certain times, in my opinion, that you just simply say, I'm not going to force you to become a Christian. I'm not going to force you to believe the way I believe. I'm going to try to set that example as you're growing up. But while you're in my house, these are my standards. These are my expectations. These are non-negotiable. And I'm sure all of us have in our homes some non-negotiables that says, you can't cross this line. That's it. And for me, that when church was open, you're going to church. Now, do they have to go to every activity? Do they have to? No, not necessarily. If they don't want to go to a Sunday night fellowship or a special event or a band coming in or a gospel group coming in, that's fine if they're old enough to stay at home and we find a sitter. But they're not supposed to forsake the assembly of Christians, and they're coming to church. And I've had to deal with that with all of my children. I've heard it from my children. You made us go, I'm not going. Some of my children go to church, some of them don't. But that's not on me. That is not my responsibility. That's their choice. And I'm not going to take the blame or not feel guilty because they made that choice. They have the foundation. They know what they're supposed to do. They have to make the choice, just like all of us have to do when we come to know Christ as our Lord and Savior. It has to be an individual choice. So.
That's my story. I'm sticking to it.
Yeah, no, that was good. I mean, it's based on Scripture. I mean, that's and you're right. That's our commandment. That's what we need to do for our kids.
I think Randy and Mike shared notes again.
No, I was just going to share a little story here because a couple weeks ago during the wrestling match, I can't remember. She may have been upset. I don't know. But this quote here, I told her, I said, I'm going to bring this up in the podcast, call it Haley's quote here. But the quote says, the way you talk to our children becomes their inner voice. And Haley's story was I was out there wrestling, Dad, and I was going to do this, but your voice was in my head to tell me not to do that. And I said, well, what did I say? Because I don't remember saying it. She said, I didn't do it, and look what happened. I won, And I was like, well, but we had that conversation a while ago, too. It's one of those deals. She's like, I can't do anything now without having your voice in my head telling me that's wrong, that's right, that's a good idea, that's not bad, And I'm like, I wish you'd share some of this with me because I don't know which direction we're going. But it's awesome to hear her tell me that.
You're doing your job.
Well, sometimes, but I think we all touched on it at some point that we are involved in our children, that they know
They're watching.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it might be a test for you right now to see how firm you're going to stand. And if she comes back at you, I'm not going to church or not this or not that. That's what I'm saying. They're going to test us at some point. And they know what the answer is going to be. They just want to know if you're going to do it or not. So I don't have any doubt right here that I'm going to go through all that. But she's going to have my voice in her head now that I know that's there. So, other than that, I mean, what was your question? Because I was going off his. I was going off his a while ago.
Blame me, huh?
Yeah, blame Mike.
Baby.
You don't even
No.
remember.
Yeah, you don't even remember now.
No, I do. Because
I did have an answer.
Because it was off of that. Don't raise your kids in church, raise them in Christ. And so the question was, do your kids see your relationship with Christ as more important than your relationship with
church, I think.
Yeah.
church?
Yeah, with church.
Something like and I asked that not to make anybody feel guilty about their
Oh, here comes my
typical Baptist pastor over here. Make you feel guilty. Pose a question. No, I didn't ask that to make you feel guilty over whether or not your kids see you in the Bible, reading, whatever. I asked that because I thought back, and I remember being at church every time the doors were open because I was a deacon's kid. We were there every time. Every night of revival, we were there. Every Sunday night, we were there. Every Sunday morning, we were there. Every Wednesday night, we were there. Every Bible quiz, we participate, and so we were there. I was there. Every visitation, I was there. I was probably at church this same amount of time I was at school. I mean, that's just. But I never saw my parents in their relationship with Jesus. I never saw him read the Bible. I never saw him pray. I saw my dad prepare for Sunday school or Bible study, but I never saw him develop his own relationship. Mm-hmm. And so that's where that question came from, because I was like, I don't want to be that way, but.
But my answer to that, I guess I could say I don't think I've reached that point yet, because Mike will attest to this. Those girls would be coming to church way back when by themselves. And when I started coming, it was because I had to be. Mike guilt me into it,
Randy had to be
He does
dragged.
that.
Yeah. But
Pushed
over
by a couple people.
time, I mean, those girls get tired of hearing me now. I get to go see my friends. Let's go to church, boys. So I think my attitude's changed from back then to now, that I don't have an argument if I say we're going to church, or even tonight. I mean, the only argument I have is Hannah's like, I only got to see you for 10 minutes. Well, you'll see me all weekend. I'll be right back, I promise. Well, I'm going to wait up for you. No, you won't. We all know we're going to stay here and talk. But at the end of the day, I don't have that argument yet. And I can't truly answer that question because I think most of the time, if we're not wrestling, if we're not doing something with the kids, we're here anyway. And we've never had an issue with any kid saying, I don't want to go tonight. But you also know my daughter, too. If she's not here, there's probably a good reason why.
There's a valid reason.
Yeah. So I think she enjoys thoroughly coming up here, doing all the stuff she can possibly do. Hannah, see your daughter, or pick on Wyatt or whatever, or Kobe. I mean, I think she lives for that. I don't know, but to honestly answer that question, I haven't made it there yet. But
Daniel, I think that
I see myself reversed around because I want to be here now. Back then, it was like, God, Mike, leave me alone.
I think looking back, I shared earlier about Philip calling me a hypocrite, and I think maybe you touched on a point that may very well been because I was so busy in the church and doing so much stuff in the church that I just probably wasn't representing Christ in my day-to-day walk. I didn't cuss, I didn't smoke, I didn't drink, I didn't all those things that you just didn't do. But he probably didn't see where I was getting any kind of growth because I was just like your dad, preparing for Sunday school, visiting. I didn't bring all my kids all those things, but if it was a worship service, they went to church Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night. And until they were about 12 or 13, they wanted to go to church. It was something they looked forward to. It was
Same area.
at 14 and older is when they started getting that, I don't really want to go. They wanted to stay up late. They tried to plan to spend the night someplace on Saturday night at a friend's house. Because
We'll be there to pick you up to get you to church.
What are you talking about? You ain't got no friends. I'm your friend.
Just like Daniel did with the lock-in. If one of my children had friends over Saturday night, they went to church. That was understood. If they stayed the next Saturday night, they went to church with us on Sunday, and their parents had to understand that as well. Or they just have to come get their kids late Saturday night because that was kind of. But I think maybe if I look back in reflection, maybe that's why he saw me as a hypocrite, just because although I was active, I was so busy working in church, I wasn't working for the Lord, and he probably saw that.
Right.
Because they'll see through you. They'll definitely see through you.
Because I think that's the one thing you got to remember: the priorities. It's God, family, then the church, right? Because this didn't even exist back when Jesus was preaching and talking. There was no buildings and committees and Wednesday night Bible studies and none of that. It was
podcast.
Yeah, it was mostly just your family, and maybe
No
you got
committees?
no committees. Maybe you got.
That's weird.
Well, the Pharisees and the Sadducees, they had committees. I didn't mean there was no committees. Sorry, there was committees. Jesus was not happy with them, apparently, if you read the book. But it was mostly families. It was mostly local communities. It was just getting together. Hey, let's get together. There's even discussions in there about, hey, eat your dinner before you come, or have the fellowship together. That's what it was about. These buildings are something that we created to add structure to it because we love structure. Oh, we love just putting things in boxes and putting it together and organizing it in timelines.
Who is we?
Humans, as just humans. We love to do stuff like
If we
that.
don't have structure, it all goes down.
No, I mean, like some of the best memories I have going to church was meeting in the garage of the pastor's house, because we didn't have a building. We didn't have that. We had family, friends. We met together. He preached. We sang in his garage. That's where we lose that sight of, I need to do this and I have to go here. We have to do this committee. I got to be on this. And I think Daniel, I really do. My personal opinion is that relationship with Jesus needs to be number one.
Yes.
And you said that. It goes God, and then it goes your family. Your family's second, right? And then comes the church. And sometimes we forget that as parents. And sometimes we get so busy with church that right now, like I've said this before, is we say yes to something, we say no to another thing. So what are we saying no to sometimes when we get so busy with that? I think. I can't. I mean, you're right. That's where it needs to be. Is God's number one, family, and then the church.
Yep. And I think I want to say that's probably where we should leave it for tonight, gentlemen, because you might not be aware of this, but we've already been doing this for 2 hours. We should probably put a pin in it.
So I'll say my last quote here, and then you guys can be. There's no such thing as a perfect parent, so just be a real one.
Good one to end it on. Right
That's
there.
weird. I thought that was perfect.
In your own eyes.
Just playing.
You're perfect. I'm way over there.
From a certain
Hey,
distance.
so we hope we answered some questions that you might have had. Hope we had some wisdom shared to you.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Mike,
Thank you for
definitely
having
for coming and sharing your wisdom with us and with the listeners. Randy, I'm going to ask, since you're back, if you'll close us in prayer.
Heavenly Father, thank you for this day. Thank you for dying on the cross for sins, Lord. Thank you for showing us the love and the mercy you do. I just want to thank you for this podcast, and hopefully you can reach out to someone in need for it. I just want to ask that you just watch over us and watch over our families and be with us. Heal the sick in your way. And Lord, I just want to thank you for each one of these guys here. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you for listening to Spiritual Debriefing, a podcast supported by First Baptist Church Hiwasse. Please like and subscribe to the podcast so you can be notified when we post new episodes, as well as check out our past episodes. We'll be posting new podcasts every other Thursday. You can follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. If you have questions you'd like us to answer, comments, or feedback on the podcast, please contact us through our social media or email us at dmeadows@fbchiwasse.com. Thank you, and we hope God blesses your day.